So this is part two of our Capstone project today. We're here with Brian McCarthy, Christian McIntyre. We're going to be going over the four arguments for St. Thomas Aquinas and God and all those things. And then after, we're going to tie it back into reflection and how we view it, if it impacts and strengthens our relationship with God or if it fails to do anything. So, Brian, you want to get us started on the first argument?
Yeah. So the first thing he talks about is how things move. He doesn't mean like things actually trying to move. He means change. So it's like anything going on. So like things that have potential to move, they have to have a cause. So like the example that we learned from class is like somebody has to be knocking over the like dominoes for that to like change. Uh, so something has to change because it's caused by something else. And if you and Aquinas says if it cannot go back to infinity in this particular way, because there's nothing doing that, the movement cannot be happening. So it's about what is sustaining change in the present.
That's pretty interesting too, because the other example that we had was the what came first, which was the egg or the chicken. It has to be the chicken because you have to reproduce and reproduce, and then you get an egg. So the unmoved mover, unchanged changer. There has to be a pure act, and there has to be some sort of potential there, and that potential has to be able to become something or actually do the thing to become act.
Yeah.
Actus purus.
And now, Christian, what do you think about his first argument, and like, what's your viewpoint on
Ooh,
this?
yeah. Yeah. So the argument of motion. But by motion, he really means like change. And like he says, everything we see is changing and things go from potential to actual. Let me give you an example. For example, something cold can become hot, but only if something already hot changes it. His point is that saying that nothing can move itself from potential to actual in the same respect. Something already actual has to cause that change. So like, he's basically saying if every change is caused by something else, then you get a chain of movers. And Aquinas argues that his chain cannot go back indefinitely. This is because there is no first mover, and if there was no first mover, then nothing would be moving right now currently. So he concludes that there must be a first unmoved power, and people have trouble explaining that, but something that causes change but isn't itself change, and that's what we call God, and that's what he calls God.
Yeah, that's a good argument there because the infinite regress, which is logically absurd. We went over the topic of like the um the dominoes falling around in a
Yeah,
circle, which it's absurd to think about like how it'd ever be possible for them to get back up, keep falling, and move into infinity. There has to be some sort of act, and there has to be some sort of mover that either picks up the dominoes and makes them all fall, or does something. But it'd be pretty absurd if they just infinitely fell down, got back up, fell down, got back up, and did that over and over for a certain amount of time on infinite time, actually.
yeah, pretty interesting.
All right.
So now we're going to be going into St. Thomas Aquinas' second argument for the efficient causes and how things exist. So, Brian?
Yeah. So the first thing he says, since nothing can exist prior to itself, nothing can be its own efficient cause. And the second thing he says, if the efficient cause of something did not exist, neither would that thing. And if the first thing in a series did not exist, nothing in the series would exist. So he's pretty much saying that something had to create that for that to be made. And I have a quote from the slideshow by Garrigou Lagrange. To do away with a supreme cause is to claim that, as someone has said, a brush will paint by itself provided it has a very long handle. So this is saying that the paintbrush cannot paint by itself without the person actually painting like the wall.
Yeah, so I like what you said there, Brian, about all that. So like there has to be some sort of first cause, like an uncaused causer. So God basically. We all understand God to be an uncaused cause. He's not something that had to be born or had to be created in order to be on Earth. He pre-existed everything. He was here for the Big Bang. He was there for everything. God is necessary and he's eternal source for all the existence. He's pre-existed everything and he's been here to create human beings, to create life and do all these things. So there's no cause for God to be here. He is here. So,
Right.
Christian.
Yeah. So when Aquinas talks about like contingency, right? He's making an important distinction, between like contingent, unnecessary, necessary, and necessary beings, So, a contingent being is like something that does not have to exist. It depends on like something else to cause or sustain it, right? And in that sense, like contingent things are also unnecessary. And in themselves, because their existence isn't really required, they could fail to exist. Like humans, animals, planets, and even like the universe and like in Aquinas' view, are contingent because they begin, change and could possibly not. And like onto a necessary being, right? On the other hand, it's not contingent. It does not depend on anything else for its existence. And, it cannot fail to exist. But if there were ever absolutely like nothing could come into existence because contingent things can't cause themselves. Trying to think. Yeah, so basically, therefore, like there must be at least one necessary being, because something like uncaused, independent, and the source of existence for all contingent things, like Aquinas identifies that as necessary being as God. So like the foundation that explains why anything exists at all instead of nothing. And that's really like my opinion on contingency and all that type of stuff.
Yeah, so Christian, what you just said, this kind of reminds me of how God is all powerful, all knowing, and how God is all good.
Yeah, so actually I had something on that, and it was like, if God is the necessary being, an uncaused cause of all contingent reality, then his attributes like would flow from that role. Because he like sustains everything that exists, but he must fully know what he causes, which is why he's all knowing. And like as the ultimate source of power and existence, like nothing could surpass him and making him all powerful. Um, and honestly, since he's like pure actuality with no limitation, he would be perfectly good in the fullness of being itself. So, that's really my view on it. I think that definitely ties back to each other in that type of situation and conversation.
Here we're going to move into